Hello, this is my second skeletal identification video. As you can tell, I have various colors that show me the representation between bones and landmarks. The first thing we're going to look at the bones, and it's going to be represented by the green dots. The first bone we have is going to be right here, and this is going to be the humerus, and it's the bone of the upper arm. So we have the humerus. The next bone we have is going to be on the medial side of the lower arm, and this is going to be the ulna. So you have the ulna, and on the lateral side of the lower arm you have the radius. So this is your radius, and this is your ulna. The next thing we're going to look at is your carpals. And I'm going to pull the hand up so we can see them. There's actually two rows of carpals. The first row we're going to look at is going to be your proximal row. So the first thing we have is going to be this bone right here, which is going to be your scaphoid. The next bone we have is going to be your lunate. Beside the lunate is going to be your triquetrum and your pisiform. And now let's look at the distal row. You have the trapezium, which is going to be right here, and your trapezoid, which is going to be right here. The middle large bone is going to be your capitate. Next to that is going to be your hamate. The bones below that, which are the certain bones of the fingers, are going to be your metacarpals, which is going to be right here. And now you have the phalanges, which are going to be these bones right here. So now let's look at some landmarks of the arm. The first thing we're going to look at is some of the landmarks on the humerus. The one right here is going to be your lesser tubercle. Then you have your greater tubercle, which is going to be right here. On the distal end of the humerus, you have your medial epicondyle and your lateral epicondyle, and then you have your trochlea. On the posterior side of the humerus, you have your olecranon fossa. So let's take a look at that real quick. Your olecranon fossa is going to be, the impression this is going to be right here. That is going to be your olecranon fossa. It's the indention that's going to be at the distal end of the humerus. While we're back there, let's look at the olecranon process of the ulna. It's going to be the C feature that at the end of the ulna that lines up with the olecranon fossa. So it's going to be right here. So this is going to be the olecranon process of the ulna. The next thing we have is going to be the styloid process of the ulna, which is going to be right here. So this is your styloid process of your ulna. And there's also on the other medial side, lateral side at the end of the radius is going to be the styloid process of the radius. So you have the styloid process of the radius right here. Like I said before, this is the styloid process of the ulna. At the proximal end of the radius, you have the radial head. So that is the bones and landmarks of the upper arm. So now let's look at the bones of the leg. I'm just taking a minute to get the hand out of the way so we can see. Okay, so now we have the bones of the leg. The main weight bearing of the bone of the leg is the femur, and that's going to be this bone right here. The next bone we have is going to be the tibia, which is going to be the bone right here. So this is going to be your tibia. Beside that bone is going to be the bone right here, which is going to be your fibula. So you have the tibia and the fibula. This little bone right here is also known as the patella. So these are the bones of the lower leg. So now let's go look at the foot. Okay, so now we have the bones of the foot. Okay, and the bones of the foot, the first bone of the foot is going to be this bone right here, which is going to be your calcaneus. On top of that, the bone right here is going to be your talus. These are going to be your tarsal bones, which we'll look at in a minute. Your metatarsals. So you have your metatarsals and your tarsals. And then you have your phalanges, which are going to be right here. So There we go, where you can see them. So this is your phalanges, your metatarsal, and your tarsals. So now let's take a look at the tarsals of the foot. This tarsal right here is going to be your cuboid bone. And then you have your navicular, so navicular, cuboid, and then you have your cuneiforms. So you have your medial cuneiform, your intermediate, and your lateral. So they go from medial to lateral. So your medial, intermediate, and your lateral. And so they're the bones of the foot. So now let's look at the landmarks of the lower leg. So on the tibia you have the medial and lateral malleolus. On the fibula you have the lateral malleolus, which is going to be right here. On the tibia you have the medial malleolus, which is going to be right here. So medial malleolus, lateral malleolus. And now you have your anterior crest of the tibia. On the femur you have the medial condyle and the lateral condyle. So medial, lateral condyles of the femur. And at the proximal end of the femur you have the head of the femur, and you have the neck of the femur, and then you also have the trochanters. This is going to be your lesser trochanter. This is going to be your greater trochanter. So you have greater trochanter, lesser trochanter, neck of the femur. The rounded portion is going to be your head of the femur. And so now let's look at the bones of the pelvis. So the pelvis is made of 3 bones, but they're actually fused together. So the first bone we're going to look at is going to be the ilium, which is going to be right here. And now you have the pubis bone, and you have the ischium. So the ischium, the pubis, and the ilium. They're the bones of the pelvis. So now let's look at some landmarks on the pelvis. This landmark right here is going to be your iliac crest. Then you have your sacroiliac joint. You have the avisor foramen, which are going to be the 2 holes right here. And then you have the ischial tuberosity. Where the femur attaches to the pelvis, you have an area called the acetabulum, which is going to be this area right here. It's hard to see because of where the skeleton's put together, but it's where the head of the femur goes in to the hip joint, and it makes the hip. So this is going to be your acetabulum. Again, that is the bones of the left arm and left leg and pelvis. And this is my second skeletal identification video. Thanks.